When Bradley Cooper comes to promote a movie in France, he does it in French, and that always impresses both French people and the rest of the world. Not because his French is perfect, it's not. He constantly mixes up feminine and masculine.
Travaille dans une restaurant.
Sometimes doesn't use the right tense or not correctly.
J'ai envie, mais j'ai jamais allé là-bas.
It's not because of his accent either, because his pronunciation is good. But again, it's not perfect.
Et le même niveau de vulnérabilité.
So why? What makes Bradley Cooper so impressive when he speaks in French? I believe the answer is his confidence. He is not afraid to speak in French. He is not afraid to make mistakes. He speaks French with confidence, no matter what. In this video, I'm going to give you Bradley Cooper's 6 rules for absolute confidence when speaking French. 1. Take your time. One of the first characteristics of Bradley Cooper's French is his pace. He doesn't rush. He takes his time to answer, sometimes leaving a blank.
C'est intéressant pour moi et elle. Quand j'ai rencontré, j'ai dit à elle, on va se faire confiance.
This does 2 things. First, it relaxes him. And 2, it gives him the time to think of something to say. And that's a good combo. Because when you try to dive into speaking without really knowing what you want to say, and that you have to take detours to add something that was interesting but that you forgot to mention, you lose the clarity. Instead, take your time. Figure out what you want to say, then say it. 2. Listen. Another rule that actually goes hand in hand with the first one is to listen. I've watched and listened to interviews with Bradley Cooper where for a good majority of the interview, he just listens.
Vous êtes en train de me casser mon cou. Vas-y, dis-lui ce que t'as à dire. Vas-y, monte. Non, mais arrête.
This is a good quality to develop overall for your life, but it's especially relevant to learning languages. Listening, really listening, without starting to think about what you want to say in between is crucial. First, because it's going to help you understand better, so you can answer better. Second, because that way you pick up new words and expressions that you wouldn't have otherwise. It's obvious to me that Bradley did a lot of listening when he was first learning French too. I can tell by the way he speaks that he did not put all his attention on how the language works, but rather how people use it.
Bien sûr, ouais, je suis pas débile, ouais.
And that makes him more confident in his French because he is familiar with the way people speak. 3. Ask. My students, especially the young ones, have a tendency to forget that they can ask if there is something they don't understand. You are allowed to ask for confirmation. Bradley Cooper definitely asks a lot of questions. He asks if what he said is right.
Tu comprends ce que j'ai dit?
He asks if what he heard is right.
Le mot que j'aime, tu sais?
He asks if it is the right word.
On est vulnérable, on dit ça en français. Vulnérable, oui.
And that obviously makes him a more confident person because he's sure he is making sense. But he has another major advantage. He gets to rephrase questions. And by doing so, he links new words and old ones, which is strengthening his memory and making him a more skilled speaker, which in turn is making him more confident. 4. Use the already made. One major cause of anxiety when you speak in French is trying to be coherent while putting sentences together. Trying to remember the right word, but also where to place it, using the correct tense and the right prepositions. Bradley Cooper doesn't do any of that. He is using already made bits of sentences and putting them together to fit what he wants to say. He doesn't think about what tense to use. He knows that to say I think that, it's je pense que.
Quand j'étais un enfant, aller au collège, université, ça va être un rêve.
Yes, that sometimes leads to a few mistakes because he put bits of sentences together without matching them. But overall, this allows him to free himself of having to come up with all the rules in his head as to where to place the adjectives or which tense to use. And it's just easy, like playing with building blocks. I talk about this a lot, and I talk about it especially in this video about Kristen Stewart's French. So if you want to know more about this building blocks idea, I link it in the sidebar and you just have to click on the video. 5. Use native expressions. This alone is why French people admire Bradley Cooper's French, because he uses building blocks to speak, and because he listens a lot, he picked up native expressions. During his interviews, he keeps using expressions like en fait or hyper, which aren't generally taught by traditional language teaching, but that French people use a lot.
Audition, pour tous les trucs, c'est comme ça, ouais.
This makes his French sound much better, much more natural, and much easier to understand for native people. 6. Laugh. The final rule of Bradley Cooper's confidence in French is to laugh.
Quelle question, hein? Quelle question.
Because sometimes he will get it wrong, sometimes he will not understand everything. Laughing about it makes it 100 times better, because having a good time, even when you make mistakes, taking speaking French as a game is fun. And when something is fun, you keep doing it. And eventually you get better. The better you get, the more confident you get too. So here's my question for you. Do you have fun when you speak French? Tell me in the comments. Fun is something I talked about in a recent video where I transcoded the productivity principle of Ali Abdaal so you can be a productive French learner.